Mr. Lin, are you from Chaozhou? No, but not far off, I'm from Fujian. So we've brought our hometown customs here too. Try some authentic Angshi Taiguanyin. Lin Shixi poured tea as he spoke. I noticed you brought two lovely ladies into the casino, one mature and sultry, the other dressed like a nun. Mr. An, you're quite interesting. You must have known Genting doesn't have hostesses, so, ha ha ha. Lin Shixi laughed with clear insinuation, plainly suggesting An Liang had brought two girlfriends with rather eclectic tastes. And Liang thought people's thoughts really showed on their faces. Someone reeking of wine and meat clearly had nothing decent on his mind. He replied seriously, the nun is my younger sister, and the other is a friend from Singapore. There's nothing to read into it. Does Mr. Lin have something on his mind? Ah ha ha ha, no. I just saw you use the Hui Feng Fan Qi method to measure the entrance before entering the international hall. That's how I knew you were a Feng Shui master, so I invited you over for a chat. And Liang knew his luck was cursed. Winning money didn't mean he'd get to spend it. He asked warily, using Feng Shui to gamble isn't cheating, is it? Are you trying to get that 700 zero back from me? Not at all. In fact, I'd like to give you another 300 zero, so you can round it up to 1,000,000 and enjoy yourself even more. Lin Shixi took 30 large chips from another table and placed them in front of An Liang. I watched you win 700 zero in just a few moves. I was about to switch dealers to break your streak, but you walked away right after your victory. I didn't even get a chance for revenge. In gambling, prolonged play always leads to loss. How many people actually walk away after winning? I saw you acting carefree and laughing easily, yet you were tightly controlled inside. Then at the blackjack table, you played as if life itself were a game, treating wins and losses as lightly as feathers. It's rare for someone so young to master both Feng Shui and gambling, and carry himself with such discipline. This old man is truly impressed. After hearing this flood of flattery, An Liang began to grasp Lin Shixi's intention. He casually pulled a crystal ashtray across the table and stacked the 30 chips inside it. I understand what you're getting at, Mr. Lin. Thank you for the gift, but I won't be gambling again. Goodbye. Wait, don't rush off yet. I'm not the boss, and I'm not asking you to stop gambling. I originally wanted to consult you about something. But now I see dark qi surging from your yin-tang point. You might not live long enough to spend that money. Are you even aware of this? Heh. So Mr. Lin is a metaphysics expert. Then perhaps you'll teach me how to resolve it. Lin Shixi's expression grew grave. In a slightly hoarse but resonant voice he said, if the King of Hell summons you at the third watch, he won't let you live till the fifth. Your life is counting down, you'll be gone within 7 days. Even if you board a plane back to America immediately, you'll waste a day en route. If you don't seize pleasure now, your life will have been lived in vain. This money here is enough for you to enjoy until your last day. But before you go, could you leave us some Feng Shui advice? Everyone dies eventually. Leaving your final Feng Shui case here at Genting would honor your extraordinary skill. I know you've already spotted Genting's fatal flaw. Otherwise, you couldn't have won so much so quickly. An Liang asked quietly, did the owner die this year? Sharp eye. The big boss passed away just this month. Even the Prime Minister attended the funeral. Now the young heir has just taken over. As for operations, we've already laid our own fertilizer. Red dust note. In Malay, Makchik refers to an older woman, akin to auntie, phonetically rendered here as Makchik. Aziz Rahman, the town chief, cut off the young man abruptly and harshly. The entire environment in Malaysia is changing, the whole planet is changing. More aquatic plants growing could simply be due to weather. You can't blame everything on the dam, just to support Abdullah's argument. Abdullah, the town chief, didn't want the issue tied to personnel matters. He immediately shouted in defense, Aziz is a professional and one of our own townspeople. Only he would speak the truth from a professional standpoint. How can we trust officials sent by the state but distrust our own? Those state officials only come down to deceive us. Their investigation reports are all fake, and now they don't even bother making fake ones anymore. They've been dragging this out because they've taken money from the Americans to destroy this place. Rahman leaned forward aggressively, gripping the armrest of the sofa as he spoke loudly to Abdullah. The David Group that built the dam is just an American contractor. Any company with the technical capability could build a dam, it has nothing to do with Americans per se. Why would Americans travel all this way just to destroy our town? Explain that logic to me. The crowd continued arguing heatedly. Though the topic had shifted to why America would target Malaysia and specifically choose Kuba Town, Lu Zhongtong was drying his hair with a large towel. He exchanged a glance with An Jing and felt something was off. Was bringing up America a distraction, or was it the real truth? Both knew An Liang was likely up in the mountains, and the David Group was probably deeply involved. Since they were meeting An Liang on the mountain tomorrow anyway, why not learn more? Lu Zhongtong had this thought the moment he walked in, which was why he stepped in to support Chief Abdullah. Now, hearing the details, he finally understood. The dam in the mountains was built by the American David Group. Lu Zhongtong and An Jing became even more alert. Lu Zhongtong, still holding the towel, sat down beside Rahman and spoke respectfully, Pakchik Rahman. I've only just arrived and don't know the full history, but I'd like to offer some perspective based on Chinese Feng Shui principles. People and their environment are deeply interconnected. I can analyze the town's recent situation based on the dam's location. If my analysis proves accurate, it'll confirm the dam caused these problems, and then everyone can decide whether further action is needed. Red dust note. In Malay, Pakchik refers to an older man akin to uncle, phonetically rendered here as Pakchik. Rahman stubbornly kept his mouth shut but gestured for Lu Zhongtong to continue. The surrounding crowd fell silent, eager to hear how Chinese Feng Shui interpreted the situation. The most fundamental Feng Shui principle is mountains govern people, water governs wealth. Kuba town sits with mountains at its back and faces the sea, oriented east to west with vast farmland in front. By Chinese Feng Shui standards, this is an excellent location. I'm certain that for centuries, this area enjoyed relative prosperity and stable population growth. It was already dark when I arrived, so I couldn't observe the surroundings. But based purely on principles, the dam excavation began 8 years ago, and that year's Tai Sui position was precisely in the east. The direction of the dam excavation directly clashed with Kuba town's orientation, creating a Tai Sui opposition. Aziz, whose dark skin marked him as a local native, was more interested in the technical details. He interrupted with a question. What is clashing with Tai Sui? Clashing with Tai Sui refers to the direction directly opposite Jupiter's position in that year. Liu Zhongtong explained plainly and directly. Aziz, who majored in geology, immediately understood. He nodded, but still couldn't grasp what Jupiter had to do with the dam. Liu Zhongtang continued. That direction represents shocks and false alarms in Feng Shui. So in that year, the town would experience major incidents that cause great alarm but no actual harm, like a serious disaster being discovered, yet resulting in no direct casualties. Aziz immediately chimed in, right. That year, our town suddenly had a minor magnitude 3 earthquake. Fortunately, all the buildings in Kuba town are low-rise, so no one was injured. At the time, I suggested it might have been caused by crustal stress from the dam excavation. But since no more quakes happened afterward, we didn't take it seriously. Liu Zhongtang nodded. Yes, that counts as a false alarm, but something else actually did happen in the year construction began on the dam. The eldest sons of the town's prominent families all suffered accidents of varying severity. The higher the family status, the greater the danger to their firstborn, even death occurred in some cases. As he finished speaking, a collective gasp rippled through the room. Old village chief Raman's face turned grim, his tightly closed lips pressed together so hard they seemed distorted. Abdullah placed a hand gently on Liu Zhongtang's shoulder and whispered, Pakchik Raman's eldest son was strangled during a home invasion that year. Around the same time, over a dozen other families lost their firstborn sons, all around 30 years old. We were terrified back then, and even hired shamans to perform exorcisms. When the deaths stopped the following year, we never connected it to the dam. Liu Zhongtang bowed slightly toward Raman. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. May Allah bless your departed child. He then added, in Feng Shui, mountains govern people, so damage to the mountain body affects human life. But the streams and reservoirs on the mountain also correspond to health issues in the human body. As the ancient Feng Shui texts say, water is the blood and essence of the mountain. Water symbolizes the circulatory system. Originally, the mountain had natural streams and lakes, an excellent ecological environment that supported the health and longevity of Kuba town's residents. But in recent years, the dam's diversion of water has led to a rise in severe illnesses among townspeople, mostly conditions like high blood pressure, blood clots, and strokes. Abdullah clapped his hands in agreement. Exactly, we've tracked this. Most of those affected are elderly. Our elders used to live very long lives, but over the past 5 years, mortality rates have kept rising, and average life expectancy has started dropping. Liu Zhongtang said, if you have enough records, check the birth order of those elderly who passed away. I'd wager that over 80% of those who died before age 60 were firstborn sons. His words sparked immediate murmurs among the villagers. Liu Zhongtang had just pointed out a pattern they'd never noticed before, and now everyone could confirm it instantly. But this wasn't some miraculous prophecy, it was an eerie, unsettling truth that sent chills down their spines. Emotions ran high in the hall. Men, women, young and old all grew agitated. The noise swelled, and some even accused the dam builders of murdering their loved ones, shouting that they'd march up the mountain to seek revenge. Abdullah struggled to calm the crowd. Once things quieted slightly, he turned back to Liu Zhongtang and asked, Mr. Liu, although Malaysia has many Feng Shui masters, we rarely interacted with the Chinese community before and never paid attention to whether our Feng Shui was sound. But now strange things keep happening. That's why I wanted to bring in an outside expert. After all, stones from other mountains can polish one's jade. Mr. An's advice must be worth far more than 1 million ringgit. And Liang set down the crystal ashtray and turned to Lin Shixi. A casino is like a tiger's den. It devours people without leaving bones. Whether I live or die is one thing. Whether I help you with Feng Shui is another. A true gentleman knows what to do and what not to do. If this is payment for Feng Shui consultation, I won't accept it. Thank you for the tea, Mr. Lin. Goodbye. Mr. An, Lin Shixi replied. You don't fully understand Genting. Over 30 years ago, our founder transformed this barren mountain into an amusement park through immense hardship. Along the way, he created jobs for countless Chinese families and became a pillar of the overseas Chinese community. His group later expanded into energy, real estate, and cruise lines, making him the richest Chinese entrepreneur in Southeast Asia. Half the respect ethnic Chinese enjoy in Malaysia today is thanks to him. Helping Genting isn't just about helping a casino. And Liang turned around, hands in his pockets. This tiger descending the mountain layout has claimed countless lives. How many people die here every year? How many jump off that cliff? Can any employment rate possibly offset those lost lives? You say you've helped many, but have you ever counted how many you've harmed? Anyway, I'm not interested in you. Don't waste your breath trying to persuade me. Oh, and that 70,000 I won from you? I won't be giving it back. It's going to a children's cancer fund as a small act of merit on your behalf. Ha 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 ha. Lin Shixi laughed heartily. He dumped a pile of chips into a small briefcase, walked to the door, and patted Enliang on the shoulder. You're an interesting young man. I was just like you once. Good. Time really is running short for both of us. I won't get the chance to tell you how much Genting has donated to society, but here, take this 30,000. It's a gift. We're clearly destined to meet. And take this card too. If anything comes up in the next few days, feel free to call me anytime. Let's have tea again in the morning. I feel we understand each other well. Thanks. If I'm still alive, I'll look you up, Enliang said. Then walked out of the underground monitoring center without looking back. Back in his room, Enliang gave Li Xiaoshan and Jing a detailed account of what had just happened, but he didn't mention the information he'd gotten from Matvei, nor that he now had Matvei's phone number. When Li Xiaoshan heard that Enliang had refused to consult for the casino, her eyes lit up with admiration. I thought you'd jack up the price and make a fortune off him. You seem so knowledgeable about gambling. I remember you talking about it like you really enjoyed it. Why turn down the casino's offer? If you'd accepted, you could have played here for free forever, and we might have scored gold cards or something. Hearing such praise, Enliang felt a surge of noble righteousness. With a solemn expression, he declared, a Feng Shui master's duty is to care about every aspect of human life. If we don't deepen our understanding and integrate Feng Shui into every corner of existence, our ability to help others becomes narrow, and we fail as true practitioners. Look at the ancient Feng Shui masters, each knew astronomy above and geography below. In this age of information explosion, a modern Feng Shui master must be like a constantly upgrading computer, absorbing more knowledge, analyzing with greater precision. Li Xiaoshan and Enjing burst into laughter at his serious expression. Enjing said, Bro, I've noticed you've got real Olympic spirit. Then she jumped onto the bed and raised her arms 3 times, shouting, higher, faster, farther. The 3 of them kept fooling around until Li Xiaoshan returned to her room to rest. Only then did Enliang immediately go online to contact Daniel. After securing a 50% profit share, Daniel's morale soared. He promptly used an illegal website run by a hacker friend to track Matvei for 20 straight hours. As soon as Matvei stepped outside the Genting casino perimeter, a text message would be instantly sent to Enliang's phone. Early the next morning, Enliang received a notification. Matvei was heading north into the mountainous area beyond Genting casino. The siblings stared at the map in astonishment. Directly north of the Genting highlands rose a mountain ridge nearly 2,000 meters high, a 100-mile stretch of untouched, uninhabited rainforest. According to Matvei's personal profile, he was an experienced outdoorsman, which wasn't unusual for a geologist, but he had claimed he was about to begin testing for his project, so why would he suddenly go off-roading now? It made no sense. Enliang immediately informed Enjing that he was going after Matvei. Enjing strongly opposed his plan. She insisted that if they were going, they should go together. And besides, their firearms hadn't arrived yet. If danger arose, they'd have no way to defend themselves. While strapping on his bulletproof vest and packing his gear, Enliang told her, there's no time to debate this. I'll follow him first. You stay here with Cuckoo and wait for the guns. They should arrive within the next couple of days. We'll keep in touch by phone. But it's a virgin rainforest. There won't be any cell signal. You can't go alone. We should wait until Data confirms Matvei's next destination and make sure he's settled before we move. What if his destination is right behind the mountain? What if he never stops? Or worse, if there's truly no signal in the forest and Data loses track of him? Everything we've done so far will be wasted. And Liang walked over to the computer and pointed to the mountain range north of Genting Casino. 20 kilometers due north along this ridge, there's a place called Gumu Village on the mountain. The nearest town below is Kuba Town, 11 kilometers apart. If I don't check in within 2 days, you go straight to Kuba Town first, then hike up to this spot. See it? Dragon's Lair. There's a dragon's lair here. And Jing studied the screen. In the mountains, 2 streams formed a V-shape as they rushed down and converged into a small river in a valley basin. The river then wound its way downhill, eventually pooling into a reservoir. Encircling this Y-shaped confluence were 7 or 8 branched dragon veins converging toward the center, a classic dragon's lair formation. Whether it was auspicious or ominous required on-site observation, but from the satellite image alone, the conditions for a true lair were already present. Tying his shoelaces, and Liang added, I'll wait for you there, or at least leave a message. Once you find the dragon's lair, you'll find my trace. Do you still remember how to pinpoint a dragon's lair? I remember, but what about Xiaoxian? And Liang paused for a moment. Don't tell her anything. After I leave, just send her back to Singapore. This could get dangerous. I don't want her taking any risks. Meanwhile, Li Xiaoxian, wearing only a white tank top and underwear, was efficiently packing her backpack in her room. The morning light filtering through the curtains highlighted her flawless, sensuous East Asian figure. Earbuds nestled in her ears connected to a gum-sized MP3 player, but instead of music, it played the live feed of Enliang and Enjing's conversation. Ever since the second day she'd met Enliang, she'd planted a match-head-sized bug near him, allowing her to eavesdrop on everything. When she heard Enliang's final words, her heart fluttered in confusion, and she froze mid-motion. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then picked up the cute, feminine phone she'd bought in Chinatown. The screensaver was a photo of her and Enliang. He still had that little goatee on his chin, grinning with a row of clean, even teeth, his smile both earnest and endearingly goofy. After staring at it for a while, she powered off the phone, sealed it in a plastic bag, and tucked it into her backpack. Then she pulled a small suitcase from the closet equipment sent by her organization, perfectly suited for this mission. Minutes later, dressed head to toe in dark green outdoor gear, Li Xiuxian slipped out of her room. She didn't take the elevator. Now that you're here, please tell us everything you know. It'll benefit every resident in town. Of course, I'll share everything I know with the mayor. May I see your map? Abdullah immediately called for a servant to bring out the local map and spread it on the table. And Jing and Lu Zhongtong leaned in and were stunned. The map was covered in irregular contour lines except for one stark, rigid feature, a massive dam slicing across the mountain like a giant staple, jarringly unnatural. Lu Zhongtong traced the dragon veins inch by inch with his finger, finally stopping at the confluence of two rivers just upstream of the dam. He tapped the spot twice, and Jing whispered, "This is the dragon's lair. The reservoir in front serves as its bright hall." Liu Zhongtong knew and Jing was desperate to reach the dragon's lair and reunite with Liang. But without knowing Abdullah's full intentions, it was too risky to act rashly, so instead, he simply nodded politely and followed Rahman down the corridor, slipping unnoticed out of the Genting Hotel. And Yun had practiced authentic Chinese Taoist internal alchemy since childhood. For her, sleep was merely another form of daily cultivation. Though nearly 50, her figure remained as youthful as a girl's, and her face appeared more than 10 years younger than her actual age. She carried an air of refined scholarly grace, utterly devoid of the artificial mystique typical of most Feng Shui practitioners, thanks to her lineage in the orthodox Southern Celestial Masters tradition of Taoism. Internal alchemy cultivation greatly enhances human potential. At its basic level, it regulates the body, promoting longevity and health. At higher stages, latent abilities gradually awaken. Depending on one's innate constitution, different supernatural gifts may emerge. But for a Feng Shui master, nothing is more crucial than the wisdom eye. Reading mountains and waters is merely surface-level Feng Shui. Between heaven and earth flows righteous qi, emanating from landscape features. A high-level Feng Shui master can perceive the rising mountain qi and flowing water qi, even in seemingly ordinary terrain. To him, nowhere is truly still, every place is governed by qi, every person both a source and subject of its influence. Through internal alchemy, one can learn to control and strengthen their personal qi. When sufficiently amplified, this qi undergoes energetic transformation, a state An Yun had long pursued with unwavering dedication. She had heard that her ancestors once reached such a state, but she had always remained half convinced. No matter how others described it, without having been there herself, she couldn't truly grasp that realm, just as someone who had never seen a mango could never form an accurate image of it, no matter how vividly it was described. An Yun had long been studying how to harness the power of talismans and where that power originated. She wasn't superstitious. She wouldn't simply believe everything written in a copy of the Celestial Master's true talisman scripture. The first lesson every child in the Yin family learned from their parents was to question tradition. From cutting-edge theories in medicine and biology, she saw vague parallels to human potential, but none could explain why her steadily advancing internal alchemy practice granted her such robust health and the ability to retain her youth. She had witnessed tangible effects from using talismans, yet still couldn't fathom the underlying reasons. In a suite on the 12th floor of the hotel, An Yun sat cross-legged on the bed, hands forming the Taiji Dao seal, slowly gathering her inner elixir at her forehead. Her left palm faced upward, gently cradling her right fist at her abdomen, with her left thumb tucked inside the right fist. This Taiji Dao seal allowed her inner elixir to circulate through all her meridians. At this moment she could feel the intertwining flow of yin and yang, the dual forces of life, moving rhythmically within her body, transforming into each other yet remaining distinct. From this very sensation, she had long ago grasped the fundamental truth of existence, that all things in this world are both contradictory and unified. But today something felt different. Her primordial spirit sank unusually deep into the recesses of her mind. She had never descended so swiftly or so profoundly before. She hadn't even known such depths existed within her. According to Taoist theory, yang qi is light and rises, while yin qi is heavy and sinks. For a female cultivator, pure yin elixir sinking so deeply indicated an excess of yin and deficiency of yang, an imbalance between the two forces. She tried to rein in her primordial spirit, but today it refused to obey as it normally did. It plunged rapidly into what she called the illusory sea, the deepest layer of subconsciousness in the brain, where a lifetime of memories were stored, where humanity's most hidden virtues and vices surfaced, and where wisdom and potential beyond modern science lay buried. And Yun was no stranger to the illusory sea. She had explored it countless times in search of life's essence and her own true nature. Yet her primordial spirit didn't stop there. It kept falling faster than ever before, so fast that Yun grew uneasy. In decades of cultivation, she'd never experienced anything like this. The descent was so rapid that the surrounding vision stretched and warped, as if she were being sucked into a bizarre bottomless vortex of light and shadow. Wasn't the illusory sea the ultimate depth of the human mind? What lay beneath it? Torn between anxiety and curiosity, Yun let herself drift along, waiting to see where her primordial spirit would take her. Whether light or darkness awaited below, she wanted to see what else lay hidden within her own heart. As the ancient sages said, "He who knows others is wise, he who knows himself is enlightened." This was the supreme state every Taoist practitioner sought higher than any technique or spell. The sky above gradually turned deep blue, then darkened further into thunderous storm clouds crackling with lightning. Bolts of electricity danced around her primordial spirit like frenzied serpents. She knew it was only illusion, yet she still felt sharp jolts of pain piercing her body. Below, landscapes slowly emerged, a Chinese countryside just before a torrential downpour, Fierce winds whipped across the land, causing vast patches of dark green terrain to sway irregularly. Where was this? And Yun couldn't tell. Such hilly regions were common throughout China. She strained to recall any memory that matched this view, but even after countless flights, she'd never seen anything like it. It didn't resemble residual memory. She searched for rivers if she could find one. She could determine direction and locate the dragon vein. As a Feng Shui master, not recognizing a place wasn't unusual. But once she spotted the dragon vein, she'd know exactly where she was, just as a surgeon might forget a patient's face, but remember every incision he'd made. Suddenly, cutting through the rolling thunder came the ear-splitting roar of aircraft engines. Before she could locate the source, a violent gust of air slammed her into a cockpit. It was the cockpit of an airplane. All the instruments were mechanical dials. Clearly, this was a World War II aeroplane. She'd never seen one up close, let alone flown one, yet everything felt strangely familiar, and she realized she was piloting it. Glancing back, she saw a squadron of Zero fighters emerging from the clouds behind her in scattered formation. The Mitsubishi AM-0 was Imperial Japan's ace fighter during World War II. This battle must be taking place in a theater of war initiated by Japan. On the ground, a train chugged forward through the storm, its boiler blazing as it burned coal at full throttle. The Zero fighters were clearly targeting that train. She sensed the Japanese had a specific objective. Something crucial was aboard that train. Protecting it was the mission. Facing the superior Zeros, Yun immediately noticed her plane was too slow. It was already at maximum speed, shaking violently as if about to disintegrate midair. While her primordial spirit raced to understand the situation, her hands moved without hesitation. She pulled the stick sharply, executing a vertical climb that sent the plane roaring straight into the cloud layer above, with the Zero squadron hot on her tail. Lightning flashed right before her eyes. Thunder exploded beside her, illuminating a colossal dragon writhing madly in the clouds, its body endless twisting in fury. The plane rolled 180 degrees, carving a sharp G-shaped trajectory in the sky before diving vertically toward the earth. This astonishing maneuver was not only beyond anything Yun could have conceived, it stunned her further when she realized she instinctively knew it was the most effective tactic against Zeros. Though famed for their agility, Japanese Zero fighters had a little-known flaw: their engines would suddenly lose power during steep vertical dives. Watching herself expertly dogfight the Japanese pilots, and Yun suddenly understood she wasn't the one flying the plane. Her primordial spirit, in its extreme inward journey, had overlapped with her father's memories. But why could she see her father's past? How, and where were the memories of previous generations preserved? Her father and Ruping had fought alongside American pilots against the Japanese Air Force during the War of Resistance. He told his children countless stories, each time with new details, each more thrilling than the last. When Enjing saw him nodding to her, giving her that subtle smile that conveyed clear understanding, she recognized it instantly. It was like sharing a tiny secret in plain sight. She pursed her lips, blinked her big eyes, and quickly looked back at the map, suppressing the smile threatening to break free, savoring the quiet sense of security and trust that came from a mature man's silent acknowledgement. More and more heads crowded around the map. No one knew how many of them could actually read such a geological topographic chart, but everyone wanted to join in the commotion anyway. Liu Zhongtang pulled Enjing out from the circle of people gathered around the table and, amid the noise, said to Abdullah and Rahman, "You two are the current and former mayors of Kuba Town, both having worked for the livelihood of its residents. Have you noticed that since the dam was completed, household incomes in Kuba Town have decreased, and yet year after year, infrastructure funding and welfare relief from the state government have also been steadily reduced?" Abdullah immediately replied, "That's absolutely obvious. Per capita income in our town has been declining every year. During my 5 years in office, quite a few factories moved in, but they kept falling behind on payments. When those factories eventually shut down, they left behind bad debts and unrecoverable accounts, leaving residents with no real benefit. Meanwhile, farmland became polluted, crop production costs kept rising, and agricultural income dwindled. While the country recovered from the financial crisis, Kuba Town seemed stuck in its own financial storm. Many families took on massive bank loans." Rahman, his face still creased with the same worried expression as before, added, "After the dam was built, state officials believed Kuba Town would enter a new phase of economic growth, more electricity for businesses, better irrigation systems, and improvements in both light industry and agriculture. So they gradually cut back support for our town. From a Feng Shui perspective," Liu Zhongtang said, "this is precisely caused by the dam." Abdullah frowned, finding this logic questionable. He asked skeptically, "Are you saying every village or town that builds a dam behind its hills suffers the same fate?" Liu Zhongtang chuckled softly. "Of course not. Feng Shui is far more precise than you imagine. In principle, water governs wealth. If water flow is properly managed and truly yields beneficial hydraulic effects, Kuba Town wouldn't be facing economic troubles. Just now, Aziz mentioned that the irrigation system downstream failed due to poor water management. That's when I realized it could trigger broader economic consequences. Moreover, direction matters too. In Feng Shui, the east is called the Zhen Palace, which also represents government officials. Water flowing from the Zhen Palace symbolizes funds allocated by the authorities. If the dam's operation and control reduce that flow, then Kuba Town will suffer accordingly. But why would father suddenly recall these things now, decades after his passing? Was this memory or imagination? and Yun stopped engaging in this mental battle. Instead, she calmly followed her father's line of sight, immersing herself in the intensity of that moment. She felt no fear in his heart, only a blazing fire erupting within. The sky and earth spun chaotically. After a wave of nauseating dizziness, the nose of the plane aligned perfectly with a Zero fighter. And Ruping let out a long, fierce cry and pulled every trigger on his controls. All 10 machine guns aboard, large and small, fired simultaneously, shredding the enemy Zero into a dying firework. His ammunition was now completely spent. Behind him, more Zero fighters descended like a pack of wolves, and Ruping's plane rolled violently, plunging through the clouds into low altitude. Ahead loomed the towering Mount Fuji. Below, the Fuji River shimmered under spring sunlight. A short, elderly Japanese man with a mustache and wearing a kimono stood on a gentle hillside, leaning on a wooden sword as a cane. He spoke to Ruping in Japanese. "You must understand more than just Feng Shui techniques. You must see the truth of the universe within it. Strength and weakness, honor and humility, yin and yang, creation and destruction, they all coexist and transform into one another. But what drives this transformation? Natural forces?" The old man gave a cold laugh. "Humph. Relying on natural forces is the same as waiting to die, like watering a flower every day and hoping it blooms. If we only use natural forces, there would be no Feng Shui at all. Feng Shui is violence. It is control. We may not be able to make a flower bloom faster, but we can certainly make it die faster. That is what we can do." Ha! In a sudden lunge, the old man swung his wooden sword, slicing cleanly through a branch in front of him. The branch snapped with a sharp crack, the cut smooth and flat as if cleaved by an axe. To sever wood with wood required not just speed, strength, and a hard blade, but above all the explosive sword chi emanating from the wielder's spirit. "Mr. Nagato," and Ruping countered, "I don't believe this is the true essence of Kuni no Tokotachi no Kamiryu Feng Shui. Between heaven and earth, Feng Shui exists to harmonize, not to dominate. Must power always be violence?" Before he could finish speaking, a heavy blow struck his shoulder. The pain jolted Yun to her knees, and the lupan in her hands clattered to the ground. Inside a dimly lit cave, a single oil lamp flickered. Crates were stacked high upon the floor. At the entrance, several men dressed as farmers crouched with rifles in hand. And Yun knew Japanese agents were searching for her. Bombs from enemy planes rained overhead. She absolutely could not step outside, not when China's cultural treasures were hidden here, including the 3 ancestral volumes of the Longju passed down through the Yin family. Right. She had to find the Longju first. Otherwise, what exactly was she protecting? She began opening crates, pulling out books to inspect them, then returning them when they weren't the Longju. The crates were filled with ancient paintings and texts, authentic calligraphy from Tang and Song masters, along with esoteric manuals on astrology and metaphysics. Fear gripped Yun. Her Yuan Shen was frantically searching for the Longju, but she didn't want to do this. She felt her Yuan Shen was being controlled by an outside force. Worse still, she remembered that not long ago Liang had done something similar, except he'd been searching blindly in the basement of their New York home, unaware of what he was looking for. But Yun knew clearly, the secret of the Longju was locked inside her own mind. This wasn't her searching for the Longju, another power was manipulating her Yuan Shen, digging into the deepest layers of her inherited ancestral memory. Her Yuan Shen had become a probe inside her own mind, helping someone else uncover secrets. Whatever she saw, the intruder saw too. Those shifting scenes and environments were merely the eavesdropper scanning her genetic memories. Once the hiding place of the Longju was found, the intruder would fixate there and begin tracing layer by layer. And Yun had never imagined her subconscious held such hidden memory strata, let alone that human memories could be inherited across generations. These ancestral memories buried deep beneath consciousness were unfathomable. Even the finest psychologists and hypnotists had never uncovered them. She longed to pause and explore, but she couldn't risk using a Yuan Shen beyond her control. And Liang must have been under the same influence back then, he just hadn't known it, and had no idea how to resist. And Yun understood her son well, since childhood, and Liang had possessed a vivid imagination. Whenever he became absorbed in something he loved, he'd drift into daydreams. Such people were deeply sensitive and easily influenced, capable of great good or great harm. That was why she'd poured so much effort into guiding him. Now it was happening to her. Thousands of miles away, she too had been pulled into the memories of an ancestor from the War of Resistance era. If this were merely a dream, one might attribute it to triggered memory recall. But losing control of her primordial spirit during cultivation could not be dismissed as coincidence. And Yun focused her mind, striving to anchor her spirit back to reality. The sooner she returned, the faster she could uncover the truth. She tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids remained tightly shut, trembling uncontrollably. Her primordial spirit was pinned deep beneath the sea of illusions, unable to break through, like a failed hypnotherapy session where the patient never wakes up again. And Yun attempted to use the soul-calling spell to trace the source of the external force. Yet she sensed no other primordial spirit nearby. The intruder now used her as a host, and her confusion was the intruder's greatest boredom. The best way to make the intruder lose interest was to deprive herself of all sensory input. And Yun swiftly channeled her energy to seal off her sight and hearing, rendering her primordial spirit an utterly meaningless soul. No matter where it drifted in consciousness, it would receive no information. All she needed to do was rise unconsciously, higher and higher. After an unknown stretch of time, Yun felt her primordial spirit return under her control. This tactic had clearly worked, but it also confirmed beyond doubt that a spirit stealer had indeed been present. Red dust note: in Taoist theory, when one's consciousness forcibly enters another person's mind to control their actions, it is called spirit stealing or dushi. She slowly opened her eyes, rose to her feet, picked up her Lupin compass, and tiptoed out of the room. She watched as the compass needle turned slowly about half a rotation per minute. This didn't mean the evil chi here was weaker than at home. It only indicated that the malevolent energy was gradually receding, and Yun stood silently by the door. It wasn't yet dawn. She checked her phone. It was only 4 a.m., precisely matching the time and Liang usually sleepwalked. And Yun understood the intruder's timing perfectly. Human vigilance hits its lowest points daily at 4 p.m. and 4 a.m. moments when people are most suggestible and easily manipulated. Launching a nightmare-like possession at this hour proved the opponent possessed profound knowledge of the human mind and formidable spiritual cultivation, and their ultimate target was none other than the legendary imperial Feng Shui art, the Dragon's Decree. Feng Shui has always been revered throughout Chinese history for site selection, residence construction, national protection, and family prosperity. Its origins trace back tens of thousands of years to prehistoric civilizations, though it only entered common practice systematically after the Tang dynasty. During the chaotic late Tang era, as the imperial palace faced imminent destruction by war, two court Feng Shui masters, Yang Yunsong and Ling-Tai, fled with the imperial Feng Shui secrets to Jiangxi province, where they went into hiding among the common folk. Yang Yunsong extracted the portions applicable to ordinary people from the imperial art, recompiled them into accessible texts, and thus created a legacy that blessed generations. The famed Yanggong Feng Shui, widely practiced to this day. Meanwhile, Ling-Tai safeguarded the sections reserved exclusively for emperors, dividing them into 3 volumes known as the Dragon's Decree, which remained hidden within the Yin family lineage ever since. After the Tang court lost both its Feng Shui masters and secret texts, the imperial Feng Shui art vanished from public discourse. For 1,000 years, no one knew of the Dragon's Decree's existence, as if everyone had forgotten that Feng Shui itself originated in the imperial palace. From the Song dynasty onward, talented civilian Feng Shui masters emerged in abundance. So much so that the imperial court often had to invite practitioners from the common folk back to serve the royal family. The key difference between the Dragon's Decree and Yanggong Feng Shui lies in perspective. A site deemed auspicious by Yanggong standards might be utterly insignificant in imperial Feng Shui, while a location harmful to ordinary people could be a crucial dragon node in the emperor's system. Yanggong Feng Shui influences a single family's fate through one mountain, one grave, or one house. But the Dragon's Decree harnesses the geomantic power of entire mountain ranges, rivers, cities, even nations, to either establish or destroy an empire. For generations, the Yin family guarded the secret of the Dragon's Decree. Yet Yun had never revealed it to Liang or Jing. Her children believed that the Dragon's Decree was merely a legend about their ancestors using Feng Shui to overthrow the Qing dynasty, and that the text had long been lost. Yun should have told them earlier, but she had divined that Liang would face a life-or-death crisis at 30. Entrusting him with the Dragon's Decree before then would bring more harm than good. Only if he survived past 30 would the duty naturally fall to him. If he died at 30, the responsibility would pass to his sister Jing. Her decision now proved correct. If Liang had known the secret, he might have already revealed it during his sleepwalking episodes at home. Yun realized the intruder seeking the Dragon's Decree must share deep ties with her father. Upon entering her sea of illusions, the intruder knew exactly what to search for and where to begin. 60 years ago, Japan's Army Intelligence Department Section 6, a group of Japanese Feng Shui practitioners had relentlessly pursued the Dragon's Decree, engaging and Ruping in a series of high-stakes battles across China, where national survival hung in the balance. 70 years ago, Ruping had traveled to Japan to study the Kunitokotachi Shinryu Feng Shui tradition under Nagato Mataro, a Japanese friend of his mother. His relationship with the Japanese was deeply entangled, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, bound by both profound gratitude and bitter enmity. If the intruder hadn't known this history, they wouldn't have targeted this specific period within her illusory sea. Yun stood like a ghost in the empty corridor. From a Taoist perspective, anyone capable of invading her illusory sea couldn't be far away, and after failing, they'd likely flee immediately. Such an invading primordial spirit carried extremely strong qi, which her Lupin compass could detect. Indeed, the compass needle had now stopped pointing southwest, far from the normal geomagnetic direction. Yun glanced toward the room it indicated. Her own guest room's adjacent neighbor, separated only by a thin wall. The perpetrator had to be inside. She crept closer to the neighboring door and examined its electronic lock, a modern push-bar design. Unless one used a battering ram to smash both door and frame, it was impossible for a single person to kick it open. Still, she gently jiggled the handle, not enough to unlock it, but sufficient to unsettle a guilty conscience. Sure enough, a faint sound came from within. Someone approached and opened the door. As the gap widened slightly, Yun leapt into the air, twisted mid-flight, and delivered a powerful backward kick, slamming the door hard against the opener. But the opener reacted with astonishing speed, stepping back half a pace to avoid the swinging door. In that split second, as the corridor light flickered into the darkened room, Yun glimpsed a short-haired woman clad in tight black leather, staring at her with perfect calm and utterly expressionless. Her face was unnaturally exquisite, like a meticulously crafted Japanese doll from a boutique display. The door slammed against the wall from a powerful kick and bounced back. The woman pushed it shut again immediately and locked the electronic lock. And Yun heard footsteps inside the room quickly heading toward the window. The intruder was trying to escape. Realizing this, and Yun rushed back to her own room. She opened her window and looked down just in time to see the woman leaping off the building, gripping a rope, a black backpack strapped to her shoulders. In the night sky, she spread her arms like a bird diving straight toward the hotel's main entrance. Right at that moment, a red convertible Ferrari sped past the front of the hotel. The black-clad woman landed precisely inside the car. With a roar of the engine, the Ferrari sped away. Just as a fireball rose from the ground racing up the rope, the woman had used all the way to the 12th floor. And Yun didn't know what it was. She quickly sidestepped beside the window and immediately caught a sharp, acrid smell of burning plastic, but under the strong northern wind, the odor vanished almost instantly. She leaned out again to look at the rope, only to find it had been completely incinerated. That fireball had been deliberately sent to burn away the ultra-strong yet highly flammable high-density polyethylene rope, erasing the last piece of evidence. Now, no matter what Yun said, no one would believe a black-clad woman had jumped from the 12th floor at 4 in the morning. Her heart sank instantly. This opponent was far more formidable than she'd ever imagined. A baffling case with no leads, an invisible enemy, it left Yun's mind in utter chaos. But no matter how tangled things got, she couldn't afford to get trapped in confusion. That was exactly what the opponent wanted. If she did nothing, the enemy would press forward relentlessly until they succeeded. She worried deeply about her 2 children's safety in Malaysia, yet she also faced a problem unlike any she'd encountered before. She never expected the conflict over the Longju, the dragon's secret, would emerge within her lifetime. She had many friends in China who could help her investigate the adjacent room quickly. With assistance from the Public Security Bureau, they thoroughly searched the neighboring suite. Aside from signs someone had sat there, they found no trace of evidence. They also checked with hotel security and reviewed the computer records. There was no rental record for that room at all. The front desk staff had no information either. Most alarming of all, surveillance footage from the past 24 hours showed no one entering the adjacent room except housekeeping staff. And Yun and several officers replayed the footage slowly, frame by frame. After hours of painstaking review, they finally spotted something new. At 11:30 p.m., during the shift change at the hotel, a short-haired woman in tight black leather walked into the lobby carrying a large backpack. Since the front desk was busy with handover duties and few guests were around, and because the elevator happened to be on the ground floor, she entered without drawing attention. But from the moment she stepped into the elevator, the recording went dark for exactly 2 minutes. At normal playback speed, this blackout was nearly imperceptible. After the brief interference, no one else was seen entering or exiting the 12th floor, and Yun deduced that during those 2 minutes, the woman had used a hacked electronic keycard to enter the room next to hers and lay in wait until the early hours of the morning, when she began her strange attempt to probe on Yun's memories. To Yun, this clue was significant, but to the police, it wasn't enough to open an official investigation. She would have to handle this on her own terms. She longed to rush to Liang's side. A mother's worry and love made her restless, but she knew clearly that going to him now would only hasten his death. Keeping their distance, however, would split the opponent's focus and resources. Just 10 more days, and Liang would pass the fated date of his destined death. Only then could they confront this crisis together, so there was no use rushing, and Yun decided to stay in Beijing and monitor how things unfolded. If she could vanish right under the opponent's nose, it would be a real test for them. Even though she still couldn't identify who they were, every move they made through layers of obstacles would inevitably leave traces. As the saying goes, the higher one climbs, the harder one falls, and that's exactly when official support gets withdrawn and abandoned. In the hall, everyone fell silent after hearing Lu Zhongtang's words. Abdullah stood with his hands on his hips, thinking for a moment, then grabbed Rahman's arm and pleaded, "Pakchik Rahman, we can only rely on ourselves now. We can't keep waiting for higher-ups to solve our problems." The crowd, once hesitant, now unanimously backed Abdullah, shouting that he should lead them to protect their land. And Jing found their reaction puzzling. The dam was already built. What was done was done. Aside from filing formal complaints to the state authorities demanding its shutdown or demolition, what else could they possibly do? Surely they weren't planning to blow it up with a bomb? Lu Zhongtang also asked curiously, "What exactly do you plan to do?" Abdullah turned to him and explained, "The dam issue is a long battle. We've been suing in court all along. Only a legal victory will allow us to take further action. Today's discussion is mainly about the new construction team that's appeared on the mountain." And Jing and Lu Zhongtang exchanged glances, letting Abdullah continue. "A month ago, David Group's convoy returned to the mountain. Recently, more vehicles have been coming and going constantly. We have no idea what they're doing. The town even received official permits from the state and police. I'm certain it's the result of bribes. They're digging and blasting up there. When our villagers went to ask questions, no one came out to talk. And outside the construction zone, armed guards are stationed." Abdullah walked over to the map and pointed to the construction site. Both Jing and Lu Zhongtang froze. The location was exactly the dragon's lair that Lu Zhongtang and Liang had both identified. One wrong step, and Liang might just find his chance to strike back. And Yun's work in Beijing was nearly finished. Now she needed a place where any attempt to attack her would be easily detected and neutralized. She thought for a while but found no clear answer. She had too many friends and too many options, but the opponent was too powerful. She feared that choosing a regular home might endanger her friends in a confrontation. Yet picking a heavily guarded military compound would prevent the opponent from reaching her at all, defeating the purpose of luring them into making mistakes. Just then, her phone rang. The caller ID showed an old Beijing client, He-kun. After some pleasantries, He-kun told her he'd heard from mutual friends that she was in Beijing and immediately asked if she could come inspect the Feng Shui of a villa. And Yoon asked for details and learned. Abdullah couldn't possibly know Feng Shui, and Liang had never been involved in David Group's overseas projects. For them to pinpoint the dragon's lair in the central mountains thousands of miles away, it absolutely wasn't coincidence. And Liang and Li Shoshan had already caught up with Matvei. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, Matvei's destination was clearly the dragon's lair. The biggest question now was, what exactly was the David Group trying to do by building at the dragon's lair? The crowd's emotions grew increasingly agitated. Even Rahman, the elderly town chief, had changed his stance. He now firmly believed his eldest son's death was directly linked to the dam's construction, an act of ethnic extermination by the Americans against the Malays. All attendees were elders from prominent local families. Once they collectively accepted this conspiracy theory, their plan for tomorrow immediately unified. Abdullah decisively declared that at dawn they would march up the mountain, storm the David Group's construction site, occupy the grounds, and halt all operations until the company and state officials yielded to Kuba Town's demands, expelling the David Group and guaranteeing no future development would ever disturb the forests again. Liu Zhongtang and An Jing also volunteered to assist in the occupation plan. Both knew full well that given reports of armed security guards protecting the David Group site, 2 people climbing the mountain alone would be vastly different from an entire village doing so together. After the meeting, villagers dispersed to their homes. Guest rooms remained insufficient, so Anjing and Liu Zhongtang shared one room. Anjing sat on the bed while Liu Zhongtang asked a servant for a mat, which he spread neatly on the floor. He then meticulously changed into a checkered pajama set and sat upright and composed in a chair. Cuckoo had once been a stray dog. Liu Zhongtang was the first to take it in and train it, sharing meals and sleeping quarters throughout the process. Thus, Cuckoo adored him deeply, leaping onto him the moment it saw him. In the stillness of the room, the 2 humans sat facing each other in awkward silence, while Cuckoo perched on Liu Zhongtang's lap, licking his face affectionately. "Let's get some sleep early," Liu Zhongtang said. "Tomorrow's climb could be dangerous. We need to rest well." And Jing frowned slightly as she studied his freshly shaved jawline, sharply outlined in the lamplight. Yet despite his clean-cut, handsome appearance, Liu Zhongtang suddenly felt like a stranger to her. Recalling his old bristly face now brought her a sense of warmth and familiarity. She thought that if she simply closed her eyes and listened only to his voice, she might quickly regain the feeling of him as her trusted Hongman elder brother. So she said, "Then let's turn off the light and sleep. Good night." With that, and Jing pulled the blanket over herself and lay down abruptly. "Aren't you supposed to do scripture reading and evening prayers before bed?" "Oh?" And Jing, halfway into lying down, paused midair and stiffly sat back up. "Ah, yes, we should. Let's read for half an hour. Tonight, Brother Liu will lead." She straightened her nun's habit and knelt on the bed. Liu Zhongtang also knelt on the pillow, casually opened the Bible, and soon the room filled with clear, rhythmic chanting. "See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth, the season of singing has come, and the cooing of doves is heard in our land." And Jing clasped her hands before her chest, bowed her head, and closed her eyes, listening to Liu Zhongtang's low, gentle recitation. Drowsiness crept over her, and she couldn't help but feel annoyed at his stubborn adherence to routine. She'd been away from the convent for weeks now, though she tried to uphold her vows when possible. Constant travel had forced her to adapt to reality. In such harsh conditions, practicality mattered more than ritual. Why bother with evening prayers here? She took a quiet breath and suppressed a silent yawn as Liu Zhongtang continued without pause. "The fig tree forms its early fruit, the blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, my darling. Come, my beautiful one." And Jing muttered inwardly, "What on earth is this?" She cracked one eye open to glance at Liu Zhongtang, then quickly shut it again. On her retina lingered an image, a tall man in pajamas, kneeling obediently under the dim yellow light, carefully cradling a tiny Bible as if holding a delicate white lily. She frowned slightly. "Lily, right, the very next verse mentions lilies." Liu Zhongtang's voice grew softer. He too began to feel uneasy about reading this passage, yet it was undeniably part of scripture. This chapter, Song of Songs, was King Solomon's finest poetry, and the priest had taught that its depiction of lovers symbolized Christ's relationship with the church. He quickly lifted his eyes to peek at Anjing. There she knelt on the bed, small, graceful, and pure as a jade carving, offering no objection to his reading. Of course, Sister Jing understood this was merely allegory. He must be overthinking things. Reassuring himself, Liu Zhongtang pressed on bravely. "My beloved is mine, and I am his. He grazes among the lilies. Before the cool of the day and the shadows flee, return to me, my beloved, like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged hills." And Jing knew this Song of Songs well. It was the most romantic and mysterious poem in the Bible, with unnamed protagonists and interpretations debated for centuries. The church had never altered it, despite its passionate tone. Her favorite modern interpretation imagined King Solomon transforming into a magnificent white bull with long silken fur, reciting this love poem beside the beautiful Shulamite maiden to win her heart. She'd never dared share this interpretation with anyone, let alone admit she'd once fantasized about such a romantic encounter happening to her, and how she might not have resisted the temptation. Her lips moved faintly, joining Lu Zhongtong in recitation. On my bed at night I sought the one my soul loves. I sought him but did not find him. And Jing began to feel that the Song of Songs was entirely unsuitable for evening prayer. Indeed, no one at the convent ever used it for devotion. They tended to skip over it quickly, avoiding commentary whenever it appeared. Could it be that Lu Zhongtong, so seemingly solemn and proper, had deliberately chosen this passage? She opened one eye again to observe him. The big man sat with broad shoulders, squared eyes fixed straight ahead, reciting earnestly, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead." And Jing rolled her eyes inwardly. Seeing his utterly righteous expression left her oddly disappointed. That Guan Yu-like aura now felt less appealing than she'd hoped. This wasn't someone reciting Solomon's love poetry, it was Guan Yu reading the spring and autumn annals under moonlight. The tone made her uncomfortable, yet just as the Roman Church had never removed the Song of Songs from scripture, she never asked Lu Zhongtong to stop. "Of course, I'll move in right away. But there's one condition. I have to stay there for a few days first." This new villa was nestled in Santai Mountain on Beijing's western outskirts, roughly 20 kilometers from downtown. Quiet yet convenient for occasional city visits. And Yun loved the spontaneity of the arrangement. Such an unexpected move, unplanned even by herself, was true elusiveness. Now let them try to find her. Soon, a BMW sedan arrived at the hotel to pick up An Yun and take her to the villa. After getting into the car, she saw only a silent driver. He Kun had not come along. But that didn't matter much, and An Yun didn't like He Kun anyway. 4 years ago, she had already read his Feng Shui chart and analyzed his 8 characters. His birth chart showed greedy for wealth, damaging the seal, a configuration that, though she couldn't say it outright to his face, clearly indicated he was destined to become corrupt. That day she had gently tried to guide him, hinting at the old saying, "Those who commit too many wrongs will eventually destroy themselves." But He Kun had only cared about one thing, how many more years of good fortune he had left, and how high he could still climb. In male destiny analysis, the wealth star represents not only money but also women. A chart marked by greed for wealth and damage to the seal doesn't just crave riches, it also lusts after women, giving its bearer ample opportunity to indulge in romantic conquests. Of course, such greedy and lustful men often meet their downfall through money or women. The time when He Kun would face imprisonment was drawing dangerously close. If he hadn't followed An Yun's advice to cultivate virtue and stick to his duties, then the only path ahead of him led straight to ruin. On the way, An Yun couldn't help but wonder what had He Kun become these days. And what kind of villa would he show her? It took only an hour to drive from Beijing's Xicheng district to Santi Mountain. The BMW soon reached the mid-slope of Kuiwei Ridge. Santi Mountain wasn't part of Beijing's main dragon vein. Tucked away in a quiet corner with few people around, it was the perfect place for An Yun to stay hidden. She had expected to see a luxurious hillside villa, perhaps 3 or 5 grand houses, a swimming pool, a backyard garden, the usual ostentatious trappings. But when she stepped out of the car, she was startled by what passed for a villa. Standing on Kuiwei Ridge and looking eastward revealed the vast expanse of Beijing's urban sprawl. On the mountainside sat a cluster of buildings with gray, uneven rooftops, chaotic and unimpressive. From the outside, they looked nothing like newly built villas. Instead, they resembled an old military barracks, capable of housing hundreds of soldiers. Armed police officers opened the tightly shut iron gate, and the car drove straight inside. The driver politely carried An Yun's luggage and led her to a large house beside the parking lot. As soon as they stepped in, there was no trace of a barracks, only a hotel-style reception desk. The moment the driver entered, a beautiful female attendant came forward. She had already been instructed by her superiors to receive An Yun. An Yun let the attendant handle her bags while she walked slowly into her room, hands clasped behind her back. The interior of the villa was extravagantly luxurious, gleaming with gold. Every material and fixture used in the ceilings, floors, and walls far surpassed even Beijing's top 5-star hotels. An Yun asked the attendant whether the place was open to the public. The girl replied it was reserved exclusively for leaders and not open for business. Hearing this, An Yun couldn't help but smile coldly. She was assigned a 2-bedroom suite with a living room, fully equipped with household appliances. If nothing unexpected happened, staying here for 10 days or so would actually be quite pleasant. After unpacking, An Yun was just about to sit down and rest when the doorbell rang. In her heart, she thought, from now on I must rely on God alone. Lu Zhongtong read the passage stiffly. But since Sister Jing hadn't asked him to switch passages, changing it on his own would make him seem suspiciously eager. He began to dislike himself. Why did he have to open right to the Song of Songs? He should have checked first. Now he had no choice but to press on, keeping a straight face despite his embarrassment. Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Lu Zhongtong swallowed hard. The room was so quiet that the gulp seemed loud enough for Jing to hear, but she gave no reaction, remaining motionless on the bed like a pure jade statue. Your cheeks behind your veil are like halves of a pomegranate split open. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built as a fortress. They were both nearly driven mad. When their eyes met, they saw each other's faces frozen in awkward stiffness, flushed crimson under the lamplight. The air in the room felt as cold and solid as marble, yet sweat poured down their faces and bodies. Lu Zhongtong dared not look at Jing. He lowered his gaze to the Bible and continued reading in a hoarse, strained voice. Your 2 breasts are like twin fawns, grazing among lilies. Before the evening breeze grows cool, before the shadows flee, and Jing unconsciously pressed her arms tightly against her chest. Her heart pounded wildly and deliciously. She cleared her throat loudly and declared, "Ahem, amen, thank you, Lord, let's get some sleep. Turn off the light." Then both made a large sign of the cross over their chests, and Jing pulled the bedsheet over her head and lay perfectly still. The lights went out. In the darkness, Lu Zhongtang could be heard settling onto the floor with a long, relieved sigh. On Li Xiaoxin's wrist was a satellite tracker the size of a watch. On its dim blue fluorescent display, 2 green dots blinked intermittently, one in the north, marking Matvei. The other, trailing closely from the south, was Liang. She glanced back. Behind her loomed a moss-covered cliff. Liang was descending hand over hand, gripping thick vines as he carefully climbed down. Dressed head to toe in olive green field gear, her long hair braided into a damp plait hanging down her back, she stood firmly on the tree branch. Rain clouds drifted past in the cold wind. Water fell from above, rose from below, and seeped from within. This was the tropical rainforest's winter season, a relentless 3-month stretch of rain. At a time like this, anyone would rather be at home with someone they loved, sipping coffee, watching TV, chatting about ordinary things. But Li Xiaoxin had never known such moments. Her missions knew no seasons. Winter or summer meant nothing to her. Around her were only targets, tools, weapons, shifting identities, and orders that had to be completed. Still, this situation wasn't so bad. Being near Liang, or even just watching him from afar, felt like happiness to her. His safety weighed on her more than ever before. She had just descended that same cliff herself. Though she'd used the best climbing rope and rappelled down smoothly, she knew exactly how slick those rocks were, and what falling 100 meters would mean. This man, prone to daydreaming, was easily hypnotized. He adored shallow Broadway jazz and East Asian female pop stars, because by nature, Western women stirred no desire in him. Thinking back to a few months ago, when she first read in Liang's file, she'd scoffed at the idea of being assigned to deal with someone of such low taste, a man who'd walk in wearing a fur-trimmed coat over a thin European designer shirt, accompanied by a stunning beauty. Her attitude was no different from anyone meeting in Yun for the first time, overly enthusiastic and curious. She extended her hand eagerly and said, "I never imagined Master An was actually a woman. You're so refined and dignified, you've put every other master in the world to shame." And Yun immediately reached out and shook her hand. "Not at all. It's just that older folks are used to wearing old clothes. A long gown like this would only draw attention. May I ask who you are?" "My name is Chen Zishan. I'm a friend of old Mr. He. He's attending a meeting out of town right now, so he asked me to look after Master An first. If you need anything, feel free to contact the front desk or me directly. Here's my card." And Yun smiled and took the card. It identified Chen Zishan as the manager of an international hotel, though on the surface she appeared to be in charge of managing services at this villa. As they chatted casually, and Yun studied Chen Zishan's facial features. Chen wasn't particularly beautiful, but she was tall and slender, so much so that standing beside an average-height man, she'd appear taller than him. Her clear eyebrows and bright eyes suggested intelligence, yet from the cheeks downward, her face narrowed sharply, creating an odd imbalance. To a man, such a fox-like face might seem alluring, but from the perspective of physiognomy, it foretold a life of instability and rootlessness for Chen Zishan in her middle age. And Yun didn't even need to cast a hexagram to know Chen Zishan's true role. She was certainly He Kun's mistress. Managing the villa was merely a cover. Keeping Chen Zishan here was the real purpose. Smiling politely, and Yun thought inwardly, keeping a woman like this around must cost quite a bit. Chen Zishan quickly steered the conversation toward Feng Shui. She asked in Yun, "Master An, have you been here before? What do you think of the Feng Shui here?" And Yun chuckled lightly, "I haven't been here before. On the way up, the driver kept circling around the mountain, and with all those trees blocking the view, I only noticed how scenic it was. I haven't had a chance to analyze the Feng Shui yet." "No problem at all, old mister. He mentioned you'll be staying here for a few days, so you can take your time exploring the mountain. We even have a stable. If you enjoy horseback riding, I'd be happy to accompany you up the mountain." And Yun knew Chen Zishan was clever. Above all, she must be skilled with words. Otherwise, how could she please someone as powerful as He Kun? Changing the subject, and Yun asked, "Is dining convenient here?" Chen Zishan beamed. "I've already instructed the chef to prepare a meal. If you're not too tired, we can head to the dining room right away. The chefs here are top-tier masters from the capital. Their cooking will surely satisfy you. If you'd prefer to eat downtown, just call the front desk and they'll arrange a driver to take you. Feel free to eat wherever you like, just remember to bring the receipt back to the front desk, clearly well prepared." And Yun observed that Chen Zishan truly knew how to cater to people. Any ordinary Feng Shui master would likely spill everything and pledge their life after being treated so attentively. And Yun stayed leisurely at the villa for 2 days. She appeared to simply wander around, never leaving the premises, but inside she was burning with anxiety. For 2 days she'd been unable to reach Liang. The last update was that Liang had set off on foot toward the northern peak of Genting Highlands in Kuala Lumpur, while Jing waited for his call at the Genting Hotel. Even if she flew to Malaysia immediately, there was no guarantee she could find him. She wasn't in a rush to inspect the Feng Shui of Santai Mountain. During the drive up, she'd already grasped the overall layout. It was a highly inauspicious configuration. She didn't know whether He Kun had created this mess himself or if the Feng Shui master who designed it had intentionally sabotaged him. But for a civil servant to possess such a vast mountain villa alone, Yun was certain He Kun had ignored her advice from 4 years ago. He'd already reached the end of the road in his pursuit of material desires, and this very villa beneath her feet sealed his fate. He could never start over. He would have to keep embezzling to support these women and bribing officials to cover his tracks. Sooner or later his crimes would be exposed and punishment would follow. And Yoon knew that day was coming soon. After the weekend, Hee-kun's BMW arrived at the Santai Mountain Villa. Upon meeting Yoon, he immediately handed her a thick leather wallet. He explained that since he didn't know her bank account details, he'd brought cash this time, but once they became more familiar, such formalities wouldn't be necessary. And Yoon didn't refuse the bundle of US dollars. She knew rejecting it now would make things difficult for days to come, so she accepted it without comment, planning to deal with the money before leaving. That day, Hee-kun warmly hosted Yoon, specially arranging a feast featuring seafood and wild game. Every dish on the table came from nationally protected wildlife. And Yoon picked at a few vegetarian dishes, exchanged a few polite words, then retired to her room. Before leaving, she arranged with Hee-kun to go horseback riding the next morning to inspect the Feng Shui. In the afternoon, Yoon and Hee-kun's group rode uphill against the north wind. Hee-kun brought 2 bodyguards, and the 4 of them, each on a horse, followed a deserted mountain trail across ridges toward another peak. Having often ridden horses at her American relatives' ranches, Yoon's equestrian skills were exceptional. The north wind whipped her long gown, making it flutter loudly, while her short hair danced beneath the blue sky and white clouds, giving her a sharp, spirited look. Only a Feng Shui master knew which path to take. Without needing guidance from the guards, Yoon led the way, galloping ahead to a ridge parallel to Kuiwei Ridge.